David, welcome back.
Great to be back, Aaron.
So, how's your summer been? Let's start with that.
Well, any summer that sees the Red Sox surge past the Yankees has to be an amazing summer.
Wow.
That really is my highlight so far.
Let me just define the term surge when I point out they're half a game behind the Red Sox.
Yeah, but the Yankees, where were the Yankees in June?
Where were, David, does not apply to where they currently are. So this is an important distinction, I think, to have to make. So,
well, of course, it's an important distinction.
Fine.
Yes, of course.
Never should have traded Rafael Devers, but hey, that's water under the bridge.
Hey, since we got rid of Devers, the Sox are where they are, and I think the Giants have the worst record in baseball.
It's still early. Well, not that early. So listen, I don't know where you want to start. So you pick. You want to talk about the meeting between Doug Ford and Mark Carney? You want to talk about Air Canada? Sure. What do you want to jump on?
Well, I mean, the meeting with Doug Ford with Prime Minister Carney is interesting. I love the timing because what we have here today, there are two things going on that have a direct impact on what the Prime Minister is doing. One, there is the by-election that will bring in Pierre Poilievre, so most probably, unless there is a very much unforeseen political tsunami up in Alberta. But the thing is, he wanted to occupy that media space. But also, I get the sense that meeting was also very important because I think he is a notable absent about what's going on in Washington, D.C. I don't know what you think. But after we've seen Canada play such a role with Justin Trudeau and since Mark Carney became Prime Minister, I mean, Justin Trudeau, just before he left power, flew to Europe for a summit, Europe plus Canada, supporting Ukraine. And I find it bizarre, watching the images and the big players that are around the table in D.C. right now, along with President Zelensky, meeting with President Trump. I think, Mark Carney also wants to say, well, I have to take care of domestic issues. And for Carney meeting Doug Ford, it is very important because the transformation of Canada's economy, which will take a lot of time and it's going to hurt, has to start with Canada's most important province economically, and that's Ontario. And so you have to transform the manufacturing sector, the supply chains, the exports, the deals, how this is going to work. There's a pipeline project that could end up in Ontario also from the West. And so there's so many important issues there. And to dovetail into Air Canada, this is turning into Mark Carney's first domestic crisis because, this mechanism federally has been used successfully by the Trudeau government. You'll remember the railroad strikes and also the postal workers. And so now you have a union that's saying, big deal, I'm staying on strike. I'm not respecting the order from Labor Minister Haju. So this is going to be quite the standoff. If the union holds firm, as it seems it does, and does not respect the order, then the ball comes into Mark Carney's court, and what is he going to do? And this is becoming his first real test domestically since he became Prime Minister.
So what is he going to do, David? If you had to sort of, take a wager on this, I heard someone else suggest, we had our airline analyst, John Graddick, say maybe 5 days, and then something happens. And I think a lot of people, from what I've heard so far, have reacted to what you just said now and said, wait a sec, on those other strikes that you mentioned, the government waited a while before implementing back to work. Not on this. It took a day.
That's true. That is all true. But what I think is weighing very heavily on the Prime Minister, especially the Prime Minister's office and the people who are, looking at social media and the polling and seeing the tendencies of public reaction, is you keep on having these stories of families stuck abroad having to spend $14,000, $17,000, $25,000 to get back. And I think we weren't seeing that type of direct to consumer issues and crises with the previous episode. So I think this is maybe the motivation here, and I think that suggests that Mark Carney isn't going to wait too long. And because, again, this is a first real test of leadership as a politician. Is he going to bring down the hammer, and which means fines and very, very serious consequences for union leadership and union members who defy the order? And so waiting and waiting. You've got people, and again, you know this, and our listeners know this. I mean, you have people, they have to get back home. I mean, it's back to school, back to work, and the costs, and so those images are really connecting with average Canadians, and I think that's what's going to motivate Carney to move fast.
I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised. Then again, I don't follow labor disruptions necessarily that closely, but the reaction of the union here, that ripping up the order from the Labor Relations Board to go back, that's not the kind of thing you typically see.
No, it's not. You don't see that, because usually there is a line that's drawn to respecting the law. And so, and to see the union just testing this new government and saying enough is enough. And again, let's face it, Air Canada does not have the best public images going right now in corporate Canada. So you have that, plus you have a new untested prime minister domestically. And so I think the union is saying, okay, it's a test also of union power. There's been story after story over the last few years, Aaron, where you're seeing the decline of union power, both in Quebec and in Canada. And I think this is where CUPE is drawing the line and saying, you know what, this is where we're going to make a major stand.
Let's talk about what's happening internationally. So today, post the Trump-Putin meeting in Anchorage, now, of course, all the European leaders showed up today, including Volodymyr Zelensky in Europe. What happened? They were in Washington today. What happened from what you saw?
Well, first of all, Zelensky showed up with a suit. So that's the
wow, big news.
That was the big story coming in, is that
will he wear a suit? Yeah.
And in the Oval Office meeting, which went off without a major snag, I got to give it to Zelensky, because the same right-wing reporter that had called him on not wearing a suit in the previous Oval Office meeting asked him a question and commended him on wearing a suit, and Zelensky answered, well, you're wearing the same suit. You could have changed suits. And so a brilliant comeback. But you saw, first of all, and obviously this is anecdotal, but what it does show is that it is true, and there have been confirmed reports about this, that UK Prime Minister Starmer and others have been coaching Zelensky on how to deal with Trump. The playbook is clear. First of all, you have to thank him, and recognize his leadership, and you have to flatter the ego of the emperor. And what was fascinating, both with the one-on-one with Zelensky and then after the group session with Zelensky and the European leaders, everybody went around the table after Trump spoke, started with the same way. Thank you, Mr. President, and we thank you for your leadership, blah, blah, blah. But then this is where it got very interesting, because Zelensky with Trump, the one-on-one in the Oval, it was generalities. Again, Zelensky learning from the playbook. Don't go into specifics. Don't challenge. Just stay on talking points, very general talking points. But around the table, everybody spoke around the table. And these are people, that Trump calls his friends and say they're great people. And so Macron of France, Starmer of UK, Meloni of Italy, the Finnish Prime Minister, NATO Secretary General, European Union Commissioner, they all were talking about the fact that there's going to have to be massive security guarantees. And now we're talking more and more about does this mean U.S. boots on the ground to ensure security? Does it mean a European force on the ground? And this question will trickle down to Canada. If there is a security guarantee, will this mean that to ensure these security guarantees, Canada and the other NATO allies will have to be part of a peacekeeping force? That's a big question that is now on the table. The other piece is that Trump, in these discussions in the public, before the media, he seemed open this time around, today, at extending Article 5 provisions of the NATO treaty. Article 5 meaning that if one member is attacked, all the others have to come to the defense of that member. But in Anchorage, it was clear that he seemed to be on Putin's side when it came to the fact that Putin doesn't want Ukraine to be a NATO member. So you saw both Macron and Starmer say clearly the next step has to be a trilateral meeting. Everybody has to be in the same room at the same time. Trump did not say no to this. He didn't say no to anything. And even the Finnish prime minister said very clearly this is a war of aggression from Russia. And Trump did not react. So there's a Trump with Putin and there's a Trump with Europe. And it was two different tones and two different types of messages coming out of both days. So the next step, nobody knows.
Flip a coin. David Heurtel. David, thank you so much. Welcome back.